inside City Hall. A state court has struck down a law that was championed by Governor Cuomo that would have forced good government groups to disclose their donors. State House reporter Zach Fink has more on what is being seen as a setback for the Cuomo administration. Good evening, Zach.
Hey, Aaron, let me set the scene. The year is 2016, and Governor Cuomo is getting pressure from good government groups to pass ethics reform just 6 months before both the legislative leaders had been convicted of corruption. They wound up passing those ethics reforms, but included in that was a provision targeting the same good government groups that were criticizing the governor, and this week, that got thrown out. A coalition of good government groups are celebrating a legal victory over Governor Cuomo that would require them to reveal the identity of their donors. The groups, including the nonprofit Citizens Union, filed suit, claiming the law was aimed at crippling them.
This state law targeted not-for-profit good government groups that have had the temerity to raise ethics issues and tried to get the government to do better. That's blatantly unconstitutional.
In June of 2016, during the waning days of the Albany legislative session, Governor Cuomo held a press conference announcing a last-minute request that state lawmakers provide more clarity on the U.S. Supreme Court decision known as Citizens United.
Citizens United said, money talks and big money talks louder.
Good government groups were critical of the governor's proposal, which was bundled into a larger package of ethics reforms. Just 6 months earlier, the legislative leaders in both houses had been convicted of corruption.
Does this address the core need of fighting corruption in Albany? No, it does not.
The ethics reform package passed in the early morning hours of the final day of the legislative session, but it included new financial reporting requirements for good government groups that had been critical of Cuomo. It required that the groups disclose their private donors.
The First Amendment protects both the right to speech and the right to association. Those things don't necessarily happen in a public setting. People choose to associate privately.
The group sued and won this week when the reporting requirement was thrown out. In a statement, a spokesperson for Cuomo says, quote, "Everyone preaches transparency until transparency shows up on their own front door. The question remains, what is the advocacy industrial complex hiding?" So why did this take 3 years? Well, the Cuomo administration reached out to the nonprofits and said, basically, give us some time. We'll amend the law. We'll pass legislation cleaning it up. They waited a year. That never happened. So eventually they brought the suit back again and won.
Oh, very interesting. And of course, the statement from the governor, the desire, the clear and evident desire to attack the so-called, whatever you call it, donor industrial complex or something like that, illustrates the desire to retaliate. It illustrates the very reason people want to keep their donors anonymous, right?
Well, no doubt about it. Look, these good government groups are performing a public service, they would say. The Cuomo counter-argument is they're part of the same soup in Albany as everybody else. You can't say that you're a good government group and you're advocating for one thing, and then you're a lobbyist, you're advocating for another private interest. You should all be subject to the same rules. However, that's unconstitutional. It turns out that these groups have certain protections in terms of their donors and being able to donate anonymously, and that was eventually seen by the court.
Okay, very interesting. I guess they'll have to fight simply on the merits and not go after the individuals who supported some of these groups. There's some news, I understand it, on the vaping front as well out of Albany.